Hi there, I'm Rose, and I'm the owner and director of Life Force Yoga, and let's talk about correct perception from the perspective of yoga. I wanted to bring this up because one of the things that I'm seeing a lot lately on social media and in the world is incorrect perception, it's like, oh, I'm seeing things correctly, or correct perceptions, but people are making assumptions and acting on things that really are based on false perception or even based on imagination. And this is coming from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, but it's also coming from Vedanta philosophy. So pramana from the Yoga Sutras, pramana means correct perception. It means knowing that something is true. And this correct perception, there's actually three kinds of correct perception. So the first one is Pratyaksha, which is sense perception. This is knowing something is true through the senses. So I know that this is a book because I'm seeing it through my senses. I know that fire is hot because I can feel it on my skin. So seeing something through and taking it in through my senses. And this information is then imprinted on the mind. So a lot of correct perception of Pratyaksha, there's in the Yoga Sutras, there's the example of fire and smoke. I know that smoke comes from fire because I have seen it with my own eyes. I have watched the smoke billow forth from fire numerous times during the course of my life. I also know what fire does because I have seen fire. I have burned my toast repeatedly for years. I have burned my hand on a fire before. So I know that fire is hot, I know that fire burns, and I know that smoke comes from fire. So that's the first thing, sense perception, taking it in through your senses. The second part of pramana, the second method of correct perception, is called inference or anumana. So this is logic. And one of the things that the sutras say about inference, this logic, is that there must always be an absolute and invariable relationship between the two. What does that mean? Well, I know that where there is smoke, there is fire. It is a saying in the English language, where there is smoke, there is fire. Every instance of smoke billowing, there has also been fire present. If ever there was a time where there was smoke and there was no fire, then smoke coming from fire does no longer holds true as a piece of information. It's no longer invariable. It becomes variable, and I must retract that thought. Much the same as mountains don't move, barring earthquakes, right? Whole mountains are immovable objects. They stay put. If ever I were to see a mountain moving, I would think that that is not a mountain. So inference. I'm seeing one thing, I've perceived something through my senses before, and now I'm perceiving it again in a different way, so I know that it must be true. This is where things get a little funky, right? Sometimes our senses are clouded, or we think we're seeing something, but we're not actually seeing it. What this brings to mind for me is one of the ways that we see things, one of the sense perceptions that we count on is vision. And we think, I see a photograph, and based on that photograph, that piece of information is true. I see a video, and based on that video, that piece of information is true. We are now in a place with deep fakes where videos could be untrue, where the information set forth in a video could not be true. And so that might be, and probably should be, a sense perception that we no longer trust. Videos are not always true. Does that mean you should be questioning this video? Perhaps. Logic dictates that one thing is true, another thing is true, and from those two things being true, we can get to a third thing that is true. Logic, inference is logic. Logic is not based on belief or faith. I believe that this is how the world is, so I see that, and this is what's happening. I feel very disturbed by this image, and so this is true. And this is critical thinking. Logic is critical thinking. Logic does not supersede emotions necessarily. Logic does not negate emotions, but the Yoga Sutras, Vedanta philosophy, says that emotion needs to be trained through devotion, devotional practices. Otherwise, emotions is just this reactivity. The third kind of correct perception is verbal testimony, which is agama. So this is the relaying of accurate information through the medium of words or images, in our case, by a trustworthy person who has perceived or inferred the existence of an object to someone who is not. So someone can say to me, hey, there's a fire next door. Now the Yoga Sutras say that a trustworthy statement only comes from someone whose statements cannot be contradicted, and that this person should have keen senses, they should be trustworthy and compassionate, and they should be free from defects such as illusion, laziness, deceit, dull-wittedness, and so forth. So there's a lot of verbal testimony going around right now that is not correct perception. If you can prove that somebody has lied in the past about certain things, their verbal testimony should not be taken as truth. It should be taken as opinion. So what about when somebody was wrong, but now they're correcting their statement? They're not a hypocrite for correcting their statement. You are not a hypocrite for learning a new piece of information and then retracting an old piece of information. So trustworthy statement comes from someone whose statements cannot be contradicted, and that person should have keen senses, be trustworthy and compassionate. So why do we question authority? Because authority is often contradicting itself. Why should we question all politicians? Because politicians are not forthcoming with all of the information. And I'm saying all politicians. I truly believe all politicians should be questioned. Because they have an invested interest in getting to point B. And getting from point A to point B for a politician, especially national politicians, not so much local politicians, but bigger politicians, have an invested interest in getting from point A to point B. They will say one thing to you, they will say one thing to another person. That politician's voice is no longer trustworthy. If I can pick up a piece of literature that says one thing from a politician, I will do this for you, and then they do something different, that politician is no longer trustworthy. Does it mean that I believe the whole structure should be changed? Yes, but that's, again, just my belief, and that's an opinion. My opinion is based on logic, inference, and in this case, I'm saying that where there are politicians, there are lies. And I'm basing that piece of information, that's what my senses tell me, I'm basing that off of the logic that politicians can be found to say contradictory statements. And that is invariable. I have not yet seen a politician who did not contradict themselves. So these are facts. This is critical thinking. This is so important right now. So important right now. So how do you develop your skills of correct perception? Number one, if you're feeling an emotion, that is not a sense. That is a feeling. That is an emotion. And it is seen as a constriction in the mind. It is seen as coming from a place of ego. So if you are feeling something, it's time to take a step back and ask yourself, what am I actually seeing? Stepping into correct perception is important. What am I seeing with my eyes? What words am I hearing? What sounds am I hearing? If you are reading between the lines, well, when they say this, they really mean this, you are already stepping into inference. But consider that when you feel triggered by a word that somebody uses, that you are no longer in a state of correct perception. You are in a state of reactivity. And reactivity clouds our senses. And here's the key, the big tie-in with yoga. The mind needs to be purified to accurately translate the sense perceptions. How do you purify the mind? You purify the mind through good deeds, through correct action, right action, telling the truth, being kind. These are the two most important moral actions in yoga. Ahimsa and satya, kindness and truthfulness. You purify the mind through meditation, through practice, through listening, through service. How many of us are actually engaged in this right now? You purify the mind through listening. Meditation is listening. Just listening without reacting, and sometimes without responding. What is it to actually listen to what somebody is saying? To see them, to hear them, to feel the touch of that person, to smell that person, to correctly perceive what's in front. When you find yourself emotionally reacting to what somebody is saying, you ask them, I'm sorry, I don't understand what you are saying. Not, you're wrong. Because again, emotions cloud judgment, cloud the mind, and cloud the senses. So we can't be perceiving something correctly. We cannot see the truth if our emotions are involved. We need to clear away the emotions so we can see things correctly. This is how propaganda works. Propaganda brings up the emotion of fear. It can also bring up love, but it brings up emotions and directs your emotions in a specific way so that you will believe a specific piece of information. So the way lighting is used, the way music is used, the way images flash on the screen, those things are about creating propaganda. So that you leave at the end feeling a sense of emotion and fear, and I have to act on that, fear or anger. So my hope is, as you finish watching this video, this discourse on correct perception, that you're actually thinking, that those wheels are turning, and that you start to watch in your life. Did I take that in through my senses? Was I emotionally reacting to that? Did that remind me of another event in my life? And so I'm responding to what's happening in front of me based on that event that happened in my past. Or am I responding to something because I'm actually seeing what's happening right in front of me? This is so, so key right now in this time. When you see somebody hit another person, is that justified? Ahimsa says no, violence is not justified. The violent actions of another person does not justify violent inaction, allowing somebody else to get harmed, or standing by while people are being harmed. Well, you were violent, so violence begets violence. That in and of itself is violence. It's not kindness. It's not kindness. So, correct perception, this conversation of correct perception, it's directing us to really take things in through our senses, to not deny the things that we take in through our senses. And then what we do with it, well, that's another discussion for another video. But really just this sense of correct perception. Now, what is correct perception? Correct perception is facts. Facts. Truth. Where do you get your facts from? Facts come from verbal testimony from somebody whose statements are not contradicted. So where are you getting your facts from? Are you getting your facts from a propaganda video where emotion is stirred up in you? Or are you getting your facts from reading a piece of information from somebody who reports information? Are you watching an opinion channel where you're hearing lots of people tell you how you should interpret the facts that you're seeing? Or are you going directly to the facts? The other reason I bring this up, and I say this, is I'm hearing a lot of people saying, well, you fact check your way, I'll fact check my way. No. That's not what a fact means. A fact is a piece of information that is true, and fact-checking that means perceiving it correctly through your senses, arriving at that information based on your senses to logic, or verbal testimony, a trustworthy statement from someone whose statements cannot be contradicted, and that person should have keen senses, trustworthiness, be compassionate, and be free from defects such as illusion, laziness, deceit, dull-wittedness, and so forth. How many of us are doing this? And once again, I know I'm getting passionate here. Once again, if you are feeling an emotion, if you have an emotion and act on that emotion as though it is a fact, and now, oh, it's a fact because I believe it to be true, because it feels right in my gut, That's not a fact. Maybe you were manipulated into believing something was a fact, because truth be told, it's very easy to manipulate people through their emotions, especially when we are not training people in critical thinking and logic skills. So I hope this has been helpful for you. There are many applications of this information on correct perception, and I would invite you to start looking and really inquiring into your day, inquiring into maybe heated moments, and asking yourself, what was the correct perception? What did I actually see? And what did I start to make inferences about? And what did I start to make up stories about? Start that practice. It's really important. And then if you're not already meditating, start a meditation practice. Meditation is so important. Meditation hones our senses and allows us to see things with more clarity. Meditation purifies the mind so that we can accurately translate sense perceptions. Emotions cloud the mind, cloud discernment, cloud our judgments. Very important. So thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe for more videos. I've got some more fun stuff coming up for you. Hope you enjoyed that from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, and a couple of links below if you want to do some reading on the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I'll see you next time. Thank you.